Hey, Catherine.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about pyramids with Erica and Annette in this
Yeah.
episode,
In
and
this
got me
episode.
thinking,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you call someone who jumped off a pyramid?
I don't know.
In denial.
Oh my goodness. Hello, and welcome to The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in wine and food. I am your host, Catherine Cole.
And I am your co-host, Martin Reyes.
Thank you for pronouncing that properly, Martin. You know, we are in the wine industry where we all should know a bit of Italian, a bit of French, and of course, a bit of Spanish. And so I try to pronounce your name properly when we do the podcast, and sometimes I fail.
It's an
So
interesting thing. My mom gave me that name. It's, she's they're Mexican descent. And so Martin is the official thing. But you grew up with saying Martin, and then your friends hear my friends growing up and my friends, whatever, they heard the parents saying Martin. And so they said, Martin. So then Martin was carried over. So like now professionally, a lot of people are sort of hearing that and they're like, what is it? Is it Martin? Is it Martin? I honestly don't care, but I feel as though I want to maybe dissolve the presumption of pronouncing it correctly. So I just threw out the Martin now
I
and,
like that.
see what happens. I don't know.
I like that.
That's his real name. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also bugs me in English how we swallow consonants. So in English, American English, we say Martin. It's like, where did the
Yeah.
T go? It's gone, but it needs to be there. I like that T. So Martin.
Yep, that's
But
me.
then I just feel silly when I roll my R because I don't know. But
It's okay. Do it.
need to
It's okay.
I need to do it more. I need to do it more. Okay. Well, hello, Martin. I'm sure you recall recording episode 92 not so long ago.
Yes.
That was our first wine season. We called it that episode 92. Money, money, money. So listeners, yeah, go back and listen to episode 92 if you have not already and get caught up to speed on that. But when we were planning our second wine season, we thought, well, what would be a good follow-up to money, money, money?
I think that it's power, power, power.
Yeah.
I think who wields the power in the wine industry? That's an important question, I think.
Yeah. And it's funny, in most other industries, money and power are inextricably intertwined. But for us, I think it's two different episodes because in the wine industry, who does have the power? I mean, there are some very influential sommeliers who have a lot of power. And we know folks in the restaurant industry really don't make that much money. And I certainly can say, as a wine journalist or a former wine journalist, people who write have we are said to wield a lot of power, but we certainly don't make that much money. So money and power are two different things.
I think whether it's power or influence, even the notion of influence versus power.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is something that can be intertwined sometimes, or they can be separate. At least in our trade, I have a friend, an influential journalist, a well-known person.
Mm-hmm.
We had lunch not too long ago, and I was over a little bit of a confession, a few glasses of wine. This person tells me, "Yeah, I make not much, much less than just six figures," and it was shocking for me to hear that. And I ended up paying for lunch.
I bet you did. Because you're, as a winemaker, I'm sure you're just rolling in it, right?
Oh no! It's that's not a different topic. Yes, but anyways.
So I'm excited that we have two people who I have always wanted to hear talk about power, and I'm really delighted that they both just happen to be women, and they both happen to be women who wield a lot of power, and they wield their power for good. And one of our guests today is Erica Ducey, who is the Chief Content Officer at Pix. It's a wine discovery platform. Previously, Erica was Editor-in-Chief at VinePair, and she was the founding Editor-in-Chief at 750 Daily when I was a contributing editor there. And I just loved working with her. Her vision was just she came in, she was like a breath of fresh air, pushing for more inclusivity and more empathy in wine coverage and in the wine industry. And I think she really changed wine journalism while she was there. And so, I love talking to Erica because she has power, she has influence, and she uses it, I think, for all the right reasons and for all the right causes.
She does. And, speaking of using power for inclusivity and empathy, somebody else, my friend, Annette Alvarez Peters, who is also joining us today, she's been declared by many publications over the years, multiple times, as the most, or one of the top 3 most powerful people in the wine trade. And by the way, she is a person of color, and she's recently retired. Annette, she today serves on the boards of multiple organizations, Crimson Wine Group. She is my colleague and mentor and serves as on the board of advisors at Wine Unify. And I'm thrilled to welcome her. So let's get this conversation started.
Erica, you have been a professional observer of the wine industry for years now, so I'm going to throw an impossible question at you to start us off. Who, in your opinion, holds the most power in the wine world, and how would a wine industry power pyramid stack up?
Well, before we jump into who the actual power brokers are, I think it's useful to do a little bit of a level set, which is, when we think about wine right now, it's facing some challenges. So it's losing market share to spirits. And the growth we're seeing in the wine part of the industry is actually from RTDs, which are canned drinks like hard seltzer, and from better for you products like lower calorie wine. So we're actually facing a little bit of a non-traditional moment in wine. And at the same time, we're seeing some generational shifts with millennials drinking less alcohol overall, and channel shifts as a result of COVID, with more consumers using digital channels. So that's all to say that the power pyramid that I would stack today and the most significant players are not who or what they would have been a couple of years ago. Looking at the top of the pyramid, who are the people or institutions that influence buying behavior most significantly? Those would be the buyers at the largest retail chains. So the Costco's, the Total Wines. And that's because those buyers, they are moving sales of some $5 billion a year, which is incredibly significant. And from there, down the pyramid, I would look at wine companies with the biggest and best-selling brands. So these are the Gallo's. That company moves about 100 million cases of wine and also RTDs. They own High Noon. They own the Barefoot portfolio. So they have a huge amount of kind of innovative products which are helping them grow. Looking down the pyramid into the third tier, I think I would put wine critics, media influencers, educators, kind of in a grouping together. Now, these might be people who are either affiliated with a media brand or building their own brand. So that could be James Suckling, Eric Asimov on the media side. And then on the individual influencer side, I'd think of sommeliers like Pascaline Pelletier or media personalities like Shakira Jones, people who may not have necessarily the buying power or the audience reach of large media property, but they are incredibly influential to the industry, and people from within the industry pay a lot of attention to their recommendations. From there, going down the pyramid, I would have shifted on-premise buyers, so sommeliers, higher than wine critics and media and influencers before the pandemic. But now we're seeing a very challenging environment for the on-premise space. I've seen some estimates that the wine sales and portfolios at restaurants are going to stay down about 20% permanently. So, we have seen that shift, like I mentioned, of people moving online, buying more, spending more at home. And I think that that's a shift that is definitely post-pandemic. Then moving down to the next tier, I really think of tech platforms. So, this is also brands and platforms that are moving a ton of money. The Drizzlies, the Wine.coms, the platform that I'm at that's just starting out right now called Pix. These platforms are increasingly needed by brands, by retailers as aggregators, because it's getting very tough for individual DTC brands, for smaller companies to reach audiences at scale. So we're seeing a lot of shifts right now in the industry that is causing me to think that sort of what was an earlier hierarchy is changing significantly.
Wow, I was taking notes the entire time. That was perfect.
All right, that means the show's over. This is awesome.
We're done here. We're done here. But I want to go back and ask you about a few different things. But the first one is the elephant in the room is that at the very top of that pyramid, you happen to mention the buyers, for example, from companies such as Costco. And we happen to have with us for this episode someone who numerous times over the years was named by numerous big wine media platforms as the single most powerful wine person in the world. And Annette, I'd love to ask you about how it felt to wield so much power.
Year after year.
Thank you for that. I think it comes down to a lot of factors. I believe it was a team effort. I had a group of great buyers constantly finding gems and values for the consumer base. But I think it was also consistency year over year, constantly pushing to do better, to find wines that people wanted to drink. And at the end of the day, we moved a lot of boxes for a lot of companies, and we were able to get wine into a lot of people's mouths, and not on just the coast, not on the East Coast, West Coast, but throughout middle of America, because Costco's are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then with that, I think, building relationships that we had with wholesalers and suppliers, importers, I believe that has a great deal to somewhat influence the world of wine, in addition to having good relationships with a lot of the people that Erica pointed out that was in that third tier of the media, the critics, some of the educators, the influencers. And I think all of that boils down to working for a great company that moved a whole lot of wine.
I think it was in 2011, 10 or 11, where Costco basically overturned, the liquor laws in Washington State.
The spirits, yes. It was in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and that was a pretty big deal. It was a lot of work for a lot of years to get that to happen. And I think today consumers should have a choice where they want to purchase wines and how they purchase wines. It shouldn't be so restrictive, but unfortunately, with the way it is today, it is very restrictive.
It's interesting what you're saying, Annette, because I think in Erica's pyramid, big buyers in some ways are hand in hand with the consumer. And like you were saying, bringing wine to states maybe in the Midwest that maybe don't have such great distribution, particularly due to our onerous 3-tier system we have here in the United States. From what you're saying, it sounds like the big buyers are really partners of the consumers and bringing power back to almost the individual, because you're really reacting to what the market is asking for, correct?
100%. And you keep trying. You put out product hoping the consumers will pick it up, hoping they'll understand. And at Costco, there is a wide range of demographics there, from entry level to collectors, with a very narrow SKU count. So you have to try a lot of products, and that's where that treasure hunt mentality comes in. And once you see it, you better buy it, because it might not be there the next time you go in.
That's what's fascinating about the fact that even if you were voted the most, sorry, when I said were, it's because you retired, not because you lost your power. So I'll be clear about that. You retired, so you were. If you occasionally made a mistake and you brought in a product that didn't sell, you lost that power, and you needed to then, because the consumer still had power over you. You're reacting to them. You're almost like a consumer whisperer. Right?
True.
So it's still the consumer who's the person behind the curtain is actually the person who's drinking. They're the ones that your performance is judged upon.
Yes, they're the ultimate wizard behind that curtain.
Annette, I'm so curious to know. So while you were at Costco, how was it that you would get indicators that a certain brand would be the next big thing? Or were you testing in certain markets? Were there certain markets that were great test markets? Like, how did that all play out?
The beauty about Costco is there's 8 regional offices. And so those buyers that are in those regional office, they have the autonomy to purchase whatever they want, whatever they see fit for their particular demographics. As we know in the United States, it's pretty much the United Nations. Everybody has a different style that they like, flavor profile that they like. There's entry levels, there's collectors. It's all across the board. But there was a lot of education, a lot of reading, a lot of visiting wineries, both domestic and imports. And once you found different wines that you particularly were excited about, you would at least try it. See if you can get some allocation on it, put it in a few stores, and see how it does. Typically, if it would do well in one region, most likely it would do well in another region. And then the other buyers would pick up on that as well. So that's kind of how that shift throughout Costco in America worked. And it was very successful.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. You know, when I look at the landscape of Costco, I think I read that, you know, right now the total global alcohol sales are upwards of $5 billion in 2021, and Costco has now more than 800 stores. And I think is that not the biggest retailer in the United States?
That was always a very difficult number to figure out. As Costco knows their numbers, most retailers don't report their numbers. So you kind of have to guess. A lot of wholesalers say that, but there's a lot of big players out there moving a lot of wine. And whether that's Total Wine, whether that's the Kroger stores and their banners, there's a lot of people moving a lot of wine.
Erica, can I jump in?
Sure.
Your pyramid was amazing. Like I said before, I'm still in awe of just the way you distilled everything so clearly. And I wanted to talk about that second tier you mentioned, those big conglomerates. I mean, Gallo really is, if there's a monopoly in the wine industry, it's got to be Gallo. Something I'd forgotten is they even own the largest glass container plant in the United States, Gallo Glass. They're the
A lot of
biggest
people buy from them, yeah.
bottle producer. They make 1/3 of all the wine consumed in the United States. It's wild. What is your outlook on a business that's this big? Is it too big?
One thing that I think a lot of people don't really recognize or realize is that 2/3 of wine sales in the U.S. are from domestic product, and that's, you know, where like a huge amount of the portfolio of Gallo is coming from. And you know, are they too big? Is you know, any wine company too big? I mean, I think there has been a remarkable amount of mergers and acquisitions over the past couple of years. You know, Constellation sold to Gallo a huge number of brands that were the $11 and under wine brands. So it's just grown and grown and grown. And now Gallo, as the biggest, sees that there is a huge growth opportunity in these ready-to-drink products, RTDs, right? So those are like the High Noon. Gallo owns High Noon, which is a spirit-based seltzer.
I'm glad you defined that because I actually don't know what High Noon is. I'm such a wine nerd.
A spirit-based seltzer. And their Barefoot Spritzers. That's another brand that they own that is seeing a massive amount of growth. So I think where the biggest conglomerates, the biggest companies, and in the top 5, that would be E&J Gallo, the wine group, Trinchero Family Estates, Delicato Family Wines, and then Constellation Brands, right? So those are the top 5. And where they are seeing a ton of growth is in these non-traditional products. So these RTDs. They're also seeing growth in other areas of innovation. So this better for you category, that for Delicato, that would be it's Bota Breeze. If you've seen those Bota boxes, this is like the healthy for you version of it, which is a wine that is 80 calories, 8% alcohol per serving. And there are several others in the biggest, groups. And that's also a major area of growth. So I think what's fascinating to me is that the growth that is happening within the biggest wine companies is not from traditional wine products, with a couple exceptions, which might be like Josh from Deutsch Family Wines and Spirits, also in the top 10. It's coming from these non-traditional products. And that is a major shift that has only happened over the past couple of years.
Erica, speaking of something that a lot of people don't know, I think when we mention the words Gallo or Constellation, some people know the word Gallo, but then Constellation is like, well, who is that? And we sometimes need to remind ourselves that there's a lot of diverse wine brands within each of those portfolios. So people walk in and like, I don't see Gallo here. Maybe I see Gallo there, but there is so much diversity in my supermarket, the hundreds of wines, and yet most of them, a good chunk of them, are owned by these conglomerates. And then that's fascinating. And then when people find out, there's this kind of revolt, almost like this reaction, like, oh, I didn't know that was owned. Like with the anti-corporate sentiment, like I want to support the little guy. I thought this was a little guy, but it's actually owned by Gallo. No. So there's certain players in the wine game potentially who are hated or despised because of the power they wield.
Yeah, I think what I see definitely more and more happening is that people, consumers, all of us are friends that we can think of. There's a lot more people who are buying to their values. So there's a lot of people saying, I want to support sustainable wines. And I want to support small family wineries. And so I think it's become a lot easier over the past couple of years for people to support whatever they're interested in. And it's because there's so much information online. So, it's pretty easy to Google, Louis Martini or Martin Kodak's wine and understand that they are, part of Gallo, or that Francis Ford Coppola is part of Delicato. So I think it's true though that people who are out there drinking wine, unless you're actually doing a Google search, there is no way for you to know that a certain brand is owned by a conglomerate, and you may or may not want to support them based on what that conglomerate's values are, and what they have stated, what their sustainability programs might be, et cetera. So it does require a little bit more research on the part of the consumer.
And in Europe, all kinds of people across Europe for many, many years have had excellent access to excellent wine. It's part of their culture, we would say, right? And through your work, you've made that true in the U.S. as well. And can you talk a little bit about how stratified wine consumership was when you started as a Costco wine buyer and merchant, and how that's changed during your tenure there?
When I started in the business, which was 1995, Costco was just a mid-size type of wine operation, mostly 1.5 liters, box wine, jugs wines. I think, if I can remember correctly, we only had about 24 fine wines, and they were all probably under $25. When speaking with one of the wholesalers, they were pointing out the high-end demographics, average age 50, a lot of disposable income. And we had a discussion about pushing that envelope and pushing the envelope for change. And what if we tried to promote higher end wines? What would happen? So I started asking the various suppliers and wholesalers, my friends that collected wine, what would you want to buy if you could at Costco? Like what brands? And I recall going to a restaurant with one of my friends, and of course there wasn't cell phones where you could take photos, so I actually stole a menu, a wine list, and we went through it, and we were highlighting different brands that my friend would purchase if we could get a hold of them. And being new in the industry, I didn't know a lot, so I recall going to the various wholesalers and said, hey, can I buy these wines? I want to bring them in.
Seems like an obvious question.
Yeah, right? And so we did. And we expanded the fine wine selections, and we just continued to go down that road. But also being very mindful that there is a wide range of consumers from that, like I said, entry level to collectors. So as a buyer, you really have to try to satisfy everybody's needs. And you have to carry the white Zinfandels that my mother still loves today, to simple Chardonnays, to the Opus ones and the Cru Classé Bordeaux. So it was a shift over a long period of time. It wasn't anything overnight.
Annette, can I ask you, Martine was speaking earlier about kind of this distrust of large companies in the wine industry because everyone wants everything to be artisanal and small. And I certainly know in the luxury wine space, there is sort of a certain aspect in the luxury wine industry of wanting to keep things exclusive and keep them hidden away from everybody else. Did you ever come up against any sort of resentment, or was anyone ever rude to you and said, who are you from this big Costco company? What are you doing in our exclusive little club?
Funny enough, yes, all throughout my career.
Yeah.
From the day I started pounding the pavement. So I used to always make the comment, I'm pounding the pavement, because when we started that shift of wanting to carry finer wines, people did not know who Costco was and just thought, why would I want to sell to a discounter that has concrete floors and they merchandise in steel? Like, why would I want to do that? I remember the people from Dom Perignon coming in and saying they don't want their wine at Costco in the very beginning, and because they saw it on a pallet. And they said, that is not what we're all about. And it was kind of a funny conversation and kind of put the wholesaler in the middle with the supplier, in that they're selling pallets of Dom Perignon in Burbank. There's Hollywood right there. People are buying this for gifts. And they have lots of friends and lots of clients. Even till when I retired, there were still many companies that still didn't want their brand in Costco. And fair enough. But it was one of those conversations I had to have, and I'm sure they still have today at Costco, with these suppliers, and still seeing if they would want to sell Costco.
I'm thinking of something, Erica, you said earlier when you were talking about your the now famous pyramid of this episode. The power dynamics, they've shifted, and they've especially shifted. I would say so many things have shifted in the past few years than before. Obviously, with pandemic, obviously with social unrest and discourse, cultural upheavals, all these kinds of things, and seems as though, would it be fair to say that there's the wholesalers and some states are seen to be losing power as the wineries and innovative businesses, some of the ones you referenced earlier, find new novel ways to either promote or to have discourse or to ship direct? Do you see what I'm saying? There's these new channels, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about. I mean, even the word influencer didn't exist 15 years ago, and that is a definite point in the wine business.
Well, I think it goes back to the earlier point that there's more power in the consumer's hands than there ever has been before. And I think, the wholesale tier is just going to keep lobbying to maintain power. But I think slowly we're starting to see more states be able to ship direct to consumers, becoming easier to ship to more states than before. In some states, it's impossible to ship wines to, and certainly for spirits. But I do think that we're seeing a shift there. The shifts that we're seeing are also around fragmentation. So when I think of, looking forward into the future and into the influencer space, into the direct to consumer space, I think there's kind of two things. One is the fragmentation. So micro audiences, reaching people with specific niche interests. Someone might want a newsletter on wellness wine, or maybe they're Blaufränkisch super fans, or maybe they're rare grape hunters. Those sorts of interests are very niche, but now there are newsletters and influencers rising up to address these needs. And so I think part of it is also that the days of free audiences or huge audiences is over. So what we've seen in the direct to consumer space and in the greater tech space is that there are huge challenges. So the Facebook ad prices have tripled in the last 2 years, making it nearly impossible for small brands, small wine brands, for example, small retailers, to reach audiences at scale. Organic reach has devolved to practically nothing. Also, with a recent privacy update that Apple did, the ad targeting capabilities on the platform have dropped 30 to 50%. So you're paying more to have less effective ads. And at the same time, we're seeing shipping prices go way up. So that all creates a sort of environment where it's harder to reach people at scale. And that's why you're starting to see different innovations, platforms popping up. I think that's why you're seeing more and more retailers move over to Drizzly, or to work with Vivino, or to work with this new platform that I'm working on, Pix. And the reason is that it is hard to reach audiences at scale, and we don't see that getting easier anytime sooner. So that, I think those things are going to really impact how people interact with brands and what brands they become aware of.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Erica. It is so hard to reach the way they used to reach people, where there was a couple of magazines or a couple of critics out there or a couple of media people that people followed. Today, there's so much out there on top of how much wine is out there, from imports to domestics. And I think it will come down to, in the future, about innovation and who's going to be the most innovative in getting that reach out. I think in our business today, wineries continue to focus on the people that they've already focused on for years and years and years, and they're not thinking outside of the box. What other industry can we partner up with to try to get all of them drinking, whether it's the NBA? There's a lot of NBA players that are into wine because the players are into wine, so therefore their friends are into wine. Therefore, people who follow them are starting to get into wine. So how does the industry then continue to innovate outside of their target consumer that they've been reaching forever and bring new people into wine? And I think that's what we have to do. And we're not doing a very good job at it right now. And it's going to take a while for us to get there.
It's interesting because in my day job, I work with a lot of small winemaker brands, and what they're doing is they're just putting so much emphasis on the visitor experience, the hospitality experience, because that's one way to differentiate themselves. If you go on vacation to a particular wine region, there are only so many wineries you can visit. So it's a way to kind of get around that whole system. But it is a challenge. Darn it. I was hoping that with the fragmentation of the industry, that, with the power going to the consumer, I was hoping it would also be going to the small wineries, but they're still having to work just as hard, just in different ways, it sounds like.
Probably harder even.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Really.
Mhm.
But, going back to when Erica was talking about the larger type of companies, the Gallos, the Delicados, the Constellations, a lot of the smaller wineries end up going with these larger ones. For instance, I remember talking to Greg Brewer of Brewer Clifton and asking him, how is it going with Jackson Family? And his comment was, it was a blessing, allowing him to run the winery the way he sees fit, make the wines he wanted to make, and they finance it. So the money part, because it is a business and you have to have a lot of money in the wine business to make things happen, he was able to get that financial support and be true to what he does and how he makes his wine. So, these big companies, they can be very beneficial to these smaller wineries to get them up and going.
Yeah, Randall Graham, who founded Bonnie Doon Winery, we all of us in the industry certainly know him as definitely an outsider and a reverent voice in wine. And he is now working with Gallo. And I checked in with him recently, and he said, I said, blink twice if you need to be rescued. He was like, no, it's great. It's kind of what you were saying, Annette. Great to have that backing and that support. Grand Moraine is the ambitious, non-conforming Willamette Valley winery that presents culturally relevant, experimental art in the form of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and sparkling wines that reflect the terroir of the Grand Moraine vineyard on the wild western edge of the Yamhill Carlton AVA. And oh, by the way, Grand Moraine is also sponsoring this episode of The Foretop. Grand Moraine has emerged as a thought leader in the evolution of the Willamette Valley's next frontier, Chardonnay, through both still and sparkling expressions. Grand Moraine's Pinot Noir is also delicious. Unconstrained experimentation, eschewing expectations, and unselfconscious innovation are hallmarks of Grand Moraine. So on your next trip to the Willamette Valley, please check out the Grand Moraine Tasting Room. It's just outside the towns of Yamhill and Carlton, and you'll know you've arrived when your car windows start pulsing in time with the music reverberating from the open-air winery. That sounds really fun, but if you can't visit anytime soon, don't wait to taste those wines. Go to grandmoraine.com. That's GRANMORAINE.com. Use the promo code FORTOP for free shipping. Thank you so much, Grand Moraine, for sponsoring us. We love your style. I want to quickly move on to our last sort of portion of this conversation because I'm dying to hear from Martine. You know, one thing we haven't talked about yet is the different face of power in wine, and it's kind of delightful that we're having this conversation with this group that doesn't include any white males. As much as I love many white males in the industry, it's kind of lovely. So, Martine, I wanted to ask for our final segment of this conversation. You know, you're the first master of wine, the first MW of Mexican descent. You're the embodiment of a different face of power in the wine world. And I think maybe everyone here is. And I was curious what your thoughts are about that. I mean, the MW title is still a very traditional, old school path to power. But what are you thinking about as you're looking forward and thinking about the different face of power in wine?
Yeah, I could ponder that question because I think that the MW itself it's the prospect of behind the scenes power, or rather influence, not so much power, especially that power I think is greater overseas, outside the US. And in the US, of course, you have a different credential that wields a little bit more of the sort of pop culture power, you know, the MS themselves. But I feel as though the Master of Wine title is a little bit like the university degree. There's, you know, you say, does Harvard, does Stanford get you, you know, the pathway to traditional pathway to power? It can.
Not in my case.
It can. Well, not in my case either. You're Harvard, I'm Stanford. That's right. Forgot about that. But I think they do open up this sort of insider versus outsider struggle. But it is a power that resides within the industry, not so much overtly with the consumer or even the media. But I can say that I do feel like I'm paid more attention to and taken more seriously. And therefore, if you have desire to be a creative or take a role like what Annette had, or apply, you know, you do have some of those doors opened, or you have people throw their weight behind your ideas, like Napa Thrives, which, you know, I'm going to keep talking about for a while. But there's also a shift. What you're really asking is, there are contemporary issues that are becoming economic ones. Erica referenced earlier sustainability in wine, legitimate sustainability. The idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion is taking a strong foothold in the past couple of years. It's the consumer themselves. We're all seeing it. They are changing. And a lot of the things that were on track, for instance, there was a 2022 symposium that the Masters of Wine were going to hold that got canceled. Our power was removed. The power shifted, and it was reset by those new dynamics set by that virtual era. The speed has changed, the cadence of communication has changed, and I think.
Okay, wait, can I stop you? Why was the symposium canceled?
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID. Okay.
Yeah, because of COVID, right? Exactly. So that reset that Erica mentioned earlier, and the one that Annette herself referenced too, is that the media, something we haven't talked too much about. I think the media itself which was a traditional source of power, now it's fragmented, and the media breathes power into first from print way back, then radio, then TV, then internet, then social media, then instant access, and now it's video, now it's Zooms, now it's this maturing conversations where consumers want to have with the wineries and the wine business, sort of like at the fingertip of at their fingertips, instant access.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever controls that, and it's not just one organization or one group of media, whoever controls it and does that well, I think that is where the future lies in the new forms of power within the wine industry.
Well, that might just be Erica.
It might just be.
Wow.
I just reset you, Erica. Put you at the top of the pyramid.
I mean,
Wow, I'd love to follow in Annette's footsteps.
one foot in tech and the other foot in media. So I don't know.
Erica, how does it feel to be on top?
Oh my gosh, I'm blushing. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we are going to see a lot of shifts right now that we can't even anticipate. Just look at TikTok, for example. Like we're seeing, women like Isis Daniel, who is the millennial somm. We're seeing Amanda McCrossin, who's somm vivant, get millions of views from people who may be coming to wine for the first time. These people are coming and watching these videos, and some of them are fun, some of them are more educational, but there's entire new evolving platforms which still have free reach, meaning you can still get a lot of views without paying for them. And these are just going to keep evolving, and new publications are going to keep coming up. But, all of the, big guards, I think we've seen the influence of some traditional publications really drop in recent years. There's still big publications, still like the New York Times will probably always have a pretty big seat at the table. But I think there's going to be a lot of evolution in those more niche interests. And there's so many people in the United States that there can be a decent sized audience and decent sized businesses for more voices and more perspectives. And I think that's actually a pretty exciting thing.
I totally agree with you there, Erica, because there are so many people, and you look at the different generations, and, as they talk about boomers are aging out. Well, I got to tell you, I'm a boomer. I still buy a crap load of wine. The youngest boomer is 57. They're still buying a ton of wine. And the boomers have the most wealth out there. I read a recent article, the wealth of millennial is about 5%. And when the boomers were the millennials age today, the wealth for them was 21%. So you'll look at that shift, and you'll look at Cru Classé or Napa Valley, and who can afford that? Mm-hmm. Boomers. Only boomers can. A millennial can't afford that. So things are going to shift. Millennials are going to start looking to who's entertaining them, what's interesting to drink, what can I afford? And, I think another critical person or area that has a lot of influence is their friends. People that I've talked to that are not in the industry. And when I asked the question, how do you purchase wines? The number one answer was whatever my friend tells me to. So maybe they have other friends that are somms or work in the industry, or maybe they're into wine and read a lot of publications or visit wineries. They have a lot of influence on their friends.
I'm seeing moss growing on the chateaus of Bordeaux. I'm seeing them. I'm seeing the cobwebs forming, and all these young TikTok following consumers going elsewhere. Is what I'm envisioning. No,
I do agree with that, but I think it swings. There's a pendulum that always swings back. You and I talked about this a little bit about whether Bordeaux or Napa or Bordeaux and Burgundy are losing their sheen or their influence, and maybe they are, but eventually what is old is new again. What is new becomes old. And so I don't think there's any section in any region in the wine industry that is lost for good. I mean, take a look at the newfound love of Sardinian or Sicilian wines that were ignored for, decades when the critics were hounding Tuscany and Brunellos and Super Tuscans and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This is why you can never throw away those bell-bottom jeans, because you know
Ever.
you're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it in
You're
5
gonna wear
years.
them. You're gonna wear them tomorrow. I know it.
My low-rise jeans, I'm gonna put them on tomorrow. Yeah.
Please don't.
Apparently they're back in. I can't.
You're right.
I can't go back
No,
though.
no,
I
you're
don't
right.
know.
I got the dad bod. I can't
Yeah.
pull that off. Although I prefer the term father figure. What I've got.
Oh goodness.
Well, this has been such an interesting conversation. I wish we could just keep talking all evening. However, it is time for our dessert wine course, where we go around our virtual four-top, our virtual table for four, and share a little num-num, a little something sweet we've been enjoying lately that has something to do with food and wine. Who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Annette, yeah, let's go.
So I'm not a big dessert person for whatever reason. I'm just not. So my dessert wine is my go-to dessert wine is a bottle of champagne.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Martin would, if I offered him a glass for dessert, he would have to drink it because that's what he does. He never says no to champagne. So
It's a
what
life
am I-
rule. Yes.
what am
That's
I?
my breakfast wine.
Yeah, all day, every day. One of my go-to house favorites for Bubs is Louis Roederer. I just
Mhm.
think they are so consistent, so well made. I like to buy them in half bottles because sometimes I don't know what's wrong with them, but sometimes my husband doesn't like to drink champagne. I don't
What?
know what's wrong with him. I know. So half bottles are really perfect for me when I don't want to drink a full bottle.
That's very
Or-
responsible of you.
Yeah, I try. Safety first.
So the Roederer 242, which I think they just came out with this last holiday season. That was definitely
Yes.
my go-to holiday wine.
Yeah. It's lovely.
Biodynamically grown grapes, and
Yeah. So that's my dessert, champagne.
love it. How about you, Erica? Did you bring a dessert wine
Yeah.
for us?
Yeah, I brought an actual dessert wine, which is Broadbent's Madeira Cercial. They're 10 years. So I have been loving Cercial Madeira. So Cercial is a grape variety, and it's the driest of all of the Madeira wines. So it's still sweet, but it's not as sweet as the other types of Madeira. And in this wine, you're really getting some brininess with the citrus and spice, and it's such an incredible thing to have at your house because you can leave this bottle sitting on the counter for 3 years open, and it will still be good and be ready for when your guests arrive unexpectedly, as we all now hope they will do, moving out of COVID times. And I think this wine I actually got to try a couple years ago. I got to try an 1846 Madeira Cercial. As the lot was about to go for auction at Christie's. And if you can have a 170-year-old plus wine, these wines are zombie wines. They will stay good forever. It was still a delicious wine. So I think that's my recommendation. It's just something that I love to have in my house, that at the end of dinner, after dessert, I always pull out some little bit like dark chocolate squares and Madeira Cercial, and everyone seems to love it.
Love that. Yeah.
So, Catherine, what's yours?
What's mine? Okay.
What's your
I
dessert
have,
course?
Well, a couple things. First, I'm just going to say I can't even remember which episode it is at this point, but we do this season have a prohibition themed episode. So if we talked a little bit about the three-tier system today. So I just thought listeners might want to know that you can look through our catalog from this wine season and also find an episode entirely about prohibition. And then my virtual dessert wine, it's not a wine at all. It is that I just started watching a series that came out in March on Hulu. It is called Life and Beth. It's the new Amy Schumer series, and it's kind of dry funny. It's kind of serious, dry funny, but I love anything Amy Schumer does. And she is a wine rep. She's a wine salesperson, and so it's really fun to watch her at work. And I think her husband in real life is a chef, so she's actually so far I've only seen, I think, an episode and a half, but so far she seemed to do a pretty good job of kind of making fun of what wine reps have to do. And I also, some people I know own and run a winery in New York called Malaya Estate or Malaya Vineyards. So I'm excited to see that there's an episode that estate is the backdrop for. So if you want just some light viewing, check it out. Life and Beth with Amy Schumer, and a little wine theme going on there. How about you, Martin?
This is not wine either. This is actually a company called Bite Toothpaste Bits. This is awesome stuff. They look like pills, like you would like an aspirin pill, but they're actually toothpaste that then you chew on, and it bubbles up in your mouth, and then you brush your teeth. And the cool thing about this is that they replace all of the plastic around oral hygiene in your life. It's plastic free. They send you refills, and you keep the same little jar. And they have deodorant, they've got mouthwash, they've got whitening gel, and of course, as I mentioned, the toothpaste bits. I especially like the fact that you can just take 10 of them on a trip, if you're going to stay at someone's house or whatever, and you just have this small little package that takes almost no space in your luggage or your toiletry bag, and it never gets crusty, old, and you never have to worry about the top of the of the toothpaste tube, or if it gets if you lose the top or whatever. So I'm a big fan of what Bite is as a company. Obviously, they're trying to reduce their waste and plastic usage, and that's cool too. That's the main reason why I got it. But it's so convenient and so awesome, and the flavors are pretty cool too. And there you have it. That's my dessert course.
Okay, they definitely need to sponsor us, so I'm gonna check this out. But also, I think I'm going to have to bring some of these products. I'm looking at their website now, bitetoothpastebits.com. I think I'm going to have to bring some of these to IPNC, the International Pinot Noir Celebration, because my teeth always turn purple at these things. It'd be nice to have a little convenient thing in my pocket to
there you go.
Counteract that. Oh, that's fun. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much to our brilliant and amazing panelists.
Yes, and you can find Annette Alvarez-Peters online at wineunify.org as one of our board of advisors. She's also at Crimson Wine Group as well, among other places. You can easily just Google her. She's a force to be reckoned with. She's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, when you Google her still, she comes up as the most powerful person in wine. So it's pretty impressive. And you can find Erica Ducey, my amazing former editor, online at pix.wine. That's PIX.wine.
Excellent. You can find me, Martin Ruben Reyes. Actually, that's a little bit too much of the Rolly R at reyeswinegroup.com and at napathrives.org.
Excellent. And you can find me, Catherine Cole, at catherinecole.com. But even better, just go on over to thefourtop.org, where you can find our social media handles and tweet at us or Insta message us. Let us know what you think about power in the wine industry. And please subscribe to The Four Top on your favorite podcast app and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts so that others can find us. Signing out here from the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon. Not really a very well-powered city. I guess we've got solar power and wind power, though. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye now.
This has been the Four Top Podcast. Catherine Cole is our executive producer, Izzy Kramer is our senior producer, and I'm Keelan King, sound supervisor. We are also assisted by audio editor Michelle Richards, our production assistant Rachel Grossman, creative assistant Lex Rule, and editorial assistant Nick Toole. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, reach out to us on social media, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. And if you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes or Spotify, please do so and leave us a rating. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.